Hello and welcome to the next edition of Aberystwyth Town in Conversation With. Tonight, my guest is someone who has an association stretching back over 40 years with the club. It's current club director, Emyr Jones, better known to everyone as Brains. Brains, how's things?
Very good, thanks, Paul. Yeah,
good.
Excellent.
How was your Christmas?
Christmas was very enjoyable, to be honest. Unfortunately, we didn't have the children home, but my wife and myself had a lovely time. Very quiet, peaceful. Didn't eat and drink as much as normally. But yeah, difficult times, but no, thoroughly enjoyed.
Good. Glad to hear it. And how's everything been during lockdown? Are you keeping yourself busy?
Yeah, well, fortunately enough, I'm working at the moment at present at the Welsh Books Council of Wales in the distribution centre. Yes, from March onwards, I had 11 weeks off, but since then, yes, we've been able to go into it because we deal a lot with Amazon, and you can imagine over the lockdown, people have been taken to books to read. So, we've been distributing quite a few of them through the warehouse. So, yeah, not been busy and, still in work.
Good. But obviously missing the matches at the moment.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've had a break. I mean, obviously, as a director, I've been able to go and watch the first team play. It's been a difficult time. Gavin took the role on last season and, he's done his best, but difficult times. And it probably hasn't helped him, to be honest.
It's been a difficult season, not just for Aberystwyth Town, but for every club in the league, hasn't it, unfortunately, with the pandemic? Yeah,
you're right there, Paul. I mean, it's difficult to get football played. I mean, behind closed doors. My personal view is, I think it should be finished and null and void. There's more serious things happening at the moment without sport in general. So, but we'll just see what happens in a month or 2 months' time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's leave the present day and let's go right back to the start. And how did you first get involved with football yourself then?
Growing up as a child, as you all do, and my first memory is sitting on my father's lap. I think watching the 1970 final, and I was all dressed up in Man United kit, believe it or not, with a leather ball on my lap. I think I must have been 6 or 7, I think. That was my first memory. And yeah, going to school then, the local Welsh school in Aberystwyth. Believe it or not, teachers, big influence. I was lucky enough to have the great Will Lloyd as one of my teachers. So that was a great influence. My father was definitely one. He always made sure that I got to football every Saturday or to training. But teachers in those days, in my eyes, they looked after you. They went out of their way to help you along. And especially when I went to secondary school, I was fortunate enough to get into trials with the Welsh schools. And in those days, the teacher took me down to, I think it was the Rhondda where they were. They took 3 of us down, Martin Harris and Mark Devereux as well. But, it was his own time, but he was good enough to take us down there.
Brilliant. And just one thing that I just want to pick up on there, you said that for the 1970 final, you were in a Manchester United kit. I know we've got a lot of Liverpool fans involved in the club. Are you still a Man United fan to this day?
Unfortunately not, and moved on from Manchester United very quickly, right. Even though they had the great George Best and Bobby Charlton. I moved to Arsenal for, I think, only for a year because they won the FA Cup at, I think, 71. But no, I've been a Liverpool fan since 1973 and still currently a Liverpool fan. So it was very enjoyable last season.
Brilliant. Well, that's just one thing that I had to clear up there because I know that would raise a few questions with certain people involved with the club and former players as well.
Yes.
Right, moving forward then, Brains, you joined the club as a 14-year-old, I believe. How did that come about? Actually joining the youth setup at that time?
My family and Elvin Edwards, an ex-player of Aberystwyth Town, who captained the youth side, played for the first team under Myron Appleton, moved on to Wrexham. I think he went to Altrincham. I'm not sure if he had a spell at Man City, but Elvin now lives up in Runcorn, Cheshire, ex-fireman. But his father and his family were going to the same church as ours. And through my school football, Elvin must have been keeping an eye on me, and I can remember it now to this day. Him and his father come into our house and invited me to training on a Thursday night at Park Avenue.
Oh, brilliant. So even in those days, the training actually was on the pitch at Park Avenue?
It was always on the pitch, Paul. It was a Tuesday night and a Thursday night, rain, snow, hail. It was on the pitch, and games would take place on a Saturday as well.
Brilliant. So the pitch is obviously a bit different now, but the actual setup and the sort of the scheduling of the training is quite similar to as it is today with today's youth setup.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I mean, the setup we've got at Aberystwyth at the moment is the 3G, 4G. You know, it's an excellent. You know, do people like the 3G rather than grass? A lot of people would differ. I think it is the way forward, especially for the youngsters, and they will benefit from it, playing on it. You know, I've always been a believer, if you've got talent in your body, you'd be able to play on anything. But I think the 3G will help a lot of footballers growing up, you know, to control the ball and pass it correctly. But it's good, yeah. You know, Tuesday, Thursdays training, the academy's down there, so it's all go down there.
Okay, so tell us how your career progressed as you grew up around your teenage years then.
Well, like I said, I joined at Abba Town at 14. In those days, we had 3 teams. You had the first team, you had a reserve side playing in the Mid Wales League South, and you also had a reserve team playing in the Aberystwyth District League. So I started off playing with the Aberystwyth District League players, in that, playing against the likes of your locals, Bow Street, Talbons, your Towins, your Dolgellys. And then I also moved forward quite quickly to the Mid Wales South side, playing alongside Brian Pugh-Jones, Georgie Williams, Roger Williams, Kenny Griff, Stephen Jones. You know, there's some great players. I mean, and playing that at a very young age, I think brought me, you know, forward quite well. And also the youth team was going then as well. So I played youth football for Aberystwyth for 4 years, up to the age of 18. So you'd play on a Saturday, and he'd also play on a Sunday, and you know, we were tremendous. We had Errol Ellis, you know, Emyr Roberts, Duncan Edwards. It was a great players. I mean, the memories, you know, are brilliant. But I'm trying to remember all the players: Kevin Evans, Colin Bitchell, you know, Martin Harris was in there, Mark Devereux was in there, Paul Miller at times. You know, there was great players. But yeah, I was lucky enough. I can remember going up to Bilth Wells in the I think it was a Youth Cup. On a Sunday, we drew up there 3-3. And I think I was only about 14. We came back to Park Avenue the following Sunday, and we beat them 3-0 in the replay, and I scored all 3.
Okay.
And on that Sunday, straight after the game, I think John Mutton was the manager, John Mutton and Mike Morris. They had been in touch with the school's FA, because on that Sunday, I had to travel down to Cardiff to Sophia Gardens in those days, to join up with the under-15 schoolboys squad.
Brilliant.
But they wanted me down there at midday, but I think the club had rung up and asked if I could stay over for the game.
Fantastic. And when you got down to Cardiff there, was there any names or recognisable names that went on to play at the top level within that team? Absolutely,
Paul. I mean, you know, I was a 14-year-old from Aberystwyth. You were getting dropped off there by your parents. I was the only one from the Mid Wales area or Central Wales area. You'd meet up with the other squad, which I think there was about 18 of us down there. You had Mark Hughes, Sparky. You had Mark Bowen.
Okay, yeah.
Clayton Backmo.
Right.
You know, they were the 3 names that have actually moved on in their career, I think. I mean, Dean Holtham, I think he played for Abba later on. Okay. There was a lad there that played for Swansea, Hugh Lake. You know, and there were those, but those main 3, they've always stuck out. And yet looking back, you know, to see what they've achieved and where I am and what could have been, and you know, but there we are. I mean, you know, that's the way football goes.
Yeah, well, I don't think Mark Hughes is involved with the game at the moment, is he? So
no, I haven't seen him for a long time. Whether he's still looking for a job to get back in, I know Bowes was at Reading the last I heard of, and I'm not sure what Clayton's up to these days. But he was a banger, Clayton, in the Welsh League, so I used to meet up with him. But yeah, it was great. But I remember going down there, and I was there for a full, I think it was 5 or 6 days. I was there, and I couldn't wait to come home, Paul. I was homesick.
Right.
I was a young lad. I didn't know any of the others, to be honest. Put me on the football pitch and I was a different person. I was okay. I was vocal. But I couldn't wait to come home. And I can remember doing the actual program for some game that we played. And they were all, they were asking who you signed on for professionally, and they were all Man United, Chelsea, West Ham, Swansea, and I give Aberystwyth Town down as mine because that was the only club I wasn't involved with the professional club.
Okay. So do you think that sort of homesickness held you back in some ways then, Brains, from actually progressing to the levels that the likes of Mark Hughes and Mark Bowen got to?
That's not a question I can answer, Paul, to be honest. I mean, I'd love to have said yes, but if I could turn back the clock, and knowing these days what you've actually got to do to achieve your goal, definitely I would turn that clock back. But unfortunately, I couldn't. Like I said to you, I mean, it was great to be involved in those. But yeah, I mean, I came back to Aberystwyth, moving on. Like I said to you, I was still at Aber at 18. We tend to tell players in Aberystwyth now, look, if you haven't quite made the first team now, move on into and go and play for another adult side. And that's what happened to my career, unfortunately. And, hand on heart, living in Aberystwyth, there wasn't much else going on. Nobody actually grabbed hold of me and tried to put me on the right steps, if you like, in the career. My father tried his best, but, hey ho, that is football.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about how your playing career progressed after 18. Then where did you go next?
Like I said, I played for the youth team. I think we won, nearly every season. We won the Mid Wales Youth League, the Central Wales Youth Cups, and whatever. It wasn't. I moved on from there. Then I think I went to play for Abrasive. I think, if I remember correctly, where the next Aberystwyth Town first team manager Ronnie Cullen. Spent a couple of seasons there. Won the Emyr Morgan alongside 1 or 2 other cups for them. Also went to Bow Street the following season after playing for Abrasive. Did the same there with Arthur West. Won a couple of cups there. And I started picking injuries up, unfortunately. I did my cruciate ligaments in my knee in the semi-final of the Emyr Morgan. Luckily enough, I made it to the final and played and scored up in Llanidloes.
Okay. Wow.
But I started picking the odd niggles of ankles. I had very, very weak ankles. Kept going over them. I played for Penparky as well, but yeah, that came to an end pretty quick because my own work was getting injured. Had to take time off from work, and that's where really I looked at getting into coaching. I think it was Clive Jones that was the manager of Penparky at the time, and I just went along and helped him sign players, did a bit of coaching and the training, and that's how I got involved into running teams and coaching.
Okay. So what sort of age would you have been there when you made that transition from the playing side to the coaching side? Was it relatively young?
You're probably talking in my 20s, Paul.
Okay.
Very early 20s, to be honest. It was hard that I couldn't play. I did try. I kept going, but the hamstrings would go in. There was backaches, and I've always been one for picking anything up, unfortunately.
But obviously, with the love of the game that you obviously do have, you wanted to stay involved in any capacity possible, and coaching became the obvious way to stay involved in the game. Would I be right in saying that?
Yes, definitely. My love has always been football. I've been married for 30 years, and when I first met my wife 37 years before that, she knew that football didn't always come first, but she always knew she had a battle for love, of the game of football. But it was, into coaching, doing it with Penparky, did it for numerous years. Went down to Newquay, to a little village side down there. Yes, we were getting paid for going down there in those days. The chairman down there was very good. We didn't get a lot. There was about 6 of us going down. We achieved by winning their first major cup, So that's you know, that was good. You know, I went to Paddon, the local district league side. We were named the dream team. We made the Welsh Book of Junior Clubs, I think it was. I've got the book at home because we'd entered 7 cups and we'd won 6 in one season. Wow. Yeah, it was good, but we had the selection of the best players. You know, myself and Chris Carter run it. For 2 years. We went out and we went and asked the best local players would they like to come and play, and most of them wanted to give it a good go, and they did, and so that was enjoyable. And from there, I went to Penryn Coch pre-season. Won't talk too much, but Myron Appleton and Donald Kane came in for me then. I think that was the 89 season, I think, or something like that. Yeah, so I didn't really see out a league game with Penryn. I made the transition to Myron asked me to be his assistant. And I said, yeah, but what am I going to do on a Saturday? I said to him, come and run the youth team. He said to me, sorry, come and run the youth team in Aberystwyth. I said, yeah, but I've got a job here at Penryn, you know, to do on a Saturday afternoon. He said, well, you know, what am I going to do on a Saturday afternoon? Well, I'll tell you what, you can assist me, he said. So, you know, I took the step into I think it was the Welsh League then, or the Conica League, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, I became his assistant and at a very young age, but there we are. That's, you know, nature of it. And I went forward from there.
Okay, brilliant. Before we really dive into talking about Aberystwyth Town and the subsequent years that you've been with the club, you mentioned to me before we came on the call that you've got a unique bit of trivia and sort of under your belt. So do you want to talk me through that at this stage?
Well, going back to when I was 14 again, Paul, I mean, you know, I mean, a lot of people were talking about me as a good athlete, as a youngster. Obviously still in school. I was a good 400-meter runner. I was a good 800-meter runner. Represented David in the school sports and whatever. Got selected for the Welsh 4x100s. I was obviously a good footballer. Played a bit of rugby. Any sport, you know, my mother and father had any sport, and I'd be doing it. But also as well, I was selected from the Aberystwyth area to represent Aberystwyth in it was a HTV Wales penalty prize competition down at Ninian Park at Cardiff. Where Jimmy Andrews was the first team manager, and he was there. Bill Irwin was one of the goalkeepers, along with John Davis, who was from Llandyssil. And myself, along with about 6 or 7 others from different areas of Wales, were in this penalty prize. And I happened to win it. Scored 4 out of 5, but I won it, which meant then, in those days, every League Cup final held at Wembley, they had this penalty prize of the different regions. Wales, North England, South England, Scotland, Ireland were taking penalties at Wembley. So, I mean, my father and myself went down on the train. We spent, I think, a night in the Wembley Hotel, as it was called then. We had a tour of the ground up to the steps to lift the cup up. But I actually scored 4 goals at Wembley. So the trivia question is, can you name a Welshman that has actually scored 4 goals on a Saturday afternoon at Wembley?
That's brilliant. Well, I can now. I couldn't before, but I certainly can now. And who was the League Cup final that year then? Who were the teams playing, and did you get to watch the match afterwards too?
We didn't. We didn't get to watch the actual match. I think it was Forest and QPR. I'm not 100% sure on that. But it was a great experience, absolutely great experience. I think a young lad from Derby, I can't remember his name, but I remember he was from Derby because he had the kit on. Okay.
So from Wembley, let's go back to an even better stadium, Park Avenue. Tell us about, Brains, tell us about your early days as assistant manager under Appy at Park Avenue.
Yeah, you know, I mean, he'd asked me to come involved and be the youth team manager. I don't think Abba had a youth team at that time. So, you know, I had a difficult decision because at the time I was in pre-season and I was at Penryn Coch. I was manager of Penryn Coch. I agreed to take them on board in the Cumbria Alliance. But but Myron had come across, and Donald Kane was there as well, and they said, come and run the youth team. I said, yeah, okay, fair enough, but what am I going to do on a Saturday, Myron? I mean, you know, I tell you what, come and be my assistant, he said. So that was the beginning of my assistant managers, if you like, with the first team.
And that was that was in the late 90s, I believe. So that was around the time that the club first got into European football. So you were part of that that adventure as well.
Yeah, I mean, Myron, unfortunately, you know, he was good to me, very, very good to me. To be honest, he was a big influence on my coaching. Pushed me to go on to my badges with the trust. But that season, unfortunately, I think we lost a few games, 3 or 4 on the trot. I think we lost up in Carnarvon. I think we lost down in Cardiff. And we also lost to Caersus at home on a Tuesday night or a Friday night. I think it was 5-0. And I remember we'd had a few beers after that game, myself and him, and we didn't stay long in the football club. And on a Saturday, he rang me up and said, come down to the shop, Figar Sports. I said, what's up, mate? What's up? He said, well, sit down there. He said, because Donald Kane and David Evans Caprice, they want a word. And unfortunately to Myron, he got the sack that morning. And I remember sitting there and saying, oh, well, you know, I mean, what do you want me to do, Myron? Do you want me to stay on? And, oh, yes, definitely. And he said, you stay on. You stay in the game, you stay at the club. He said, you know, it's just, you know, between me and the football club what's happened, so you stay where you are. In which I did, and I think we had a game then on the following Tuesday against TNS at home, if I'm right, I'm not 100% sure. And myself and Donald Kane took charge of that game because obviously we didn't get the new manager in. But come the weekend, of course, Mr. Barry Powell's brought in from Coventry, West Midlands, and he came on board to finish off that season. And yeah, I think we finished fourth or fifth. And like Martin Griff said earlier in his interview, we had to wait for the Welsh Cup final, which I think Inter Cardiff beat Carmarthen. And Inter Cardiff are already qualified for Europe by finishing second or third. So we needed them to beat Carmarthen for Abba to go to Europe. And luckily for us, they did.
They did.
And, you know, off we went to Floriana, Malta.
Brilliant. Have you got any stories from that trip that you can share with us?
No, not really, to be honest, Neil. You know, I mean, there is one, but I'm sure Mr. Goldilocks, you'll get him on sooner or later. Glyndwr Hughes, he will be able to tell you all about that. But yeah, nothing cynical. I mean, it was part and parcel of the trip, good banter. It was excellent. The only thing that I can tell you of that trip is that all the first team squad were moved out to the hotel that we were staying in. Right. Or the first team squad, luckily for us, the coaching staff and the fans were allowed to stay. But there we are. You know, we won't go into detail.
That's best left back in 1999, is it?
Exactly. And I tell you what, we were very, very unlucky in that side. You know, we had a great side. I think we had Kevin Morrison, Jonathan Williams, local boys, Glyndwr Hughes, like I said. Chrissy Hammond played from away. But yeah, you know, it was excellent. We had Mikey Foster playing left back, but no, it was a good trip. Gary Lewis and Iron Thomas.
Yeah.
Mark Hughes was in the squad. Jonathan's brother Stephen was involved as well. But we 2-2 at home at Park Avenue in front of a good crowd. Travelled out there, very, very hot, Paul. We trained every day, believe it or not. We did do a good hour and a half. Martin Griff was in the side as well, and Andy Evs. But you know, we were unlucky. We lost 2-1, I think, out there. But yeah, I think if the game would have gone on another 5-10 minutes, we'd have got the equaliser and gone through. Yeah,
and then who knows who the club could have drawn in the second round. But you never know. Maybe one day soon we'll get to find out who Abba Town's next European opponents are. Keep our fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
So in the subsequent years, then, did you stay involved with the first team, or did you move on to the reserves and the youth at that point?
I stayed with Barry in all his I think 2 or 2.5 years out of his 3. that he was at the football club. Stayed along with Barry, you know, coached with him, and he was very good. Brought different ideas. Every manager that I've played or even been assistant or under, I've picked you know, good things and one or two bad things. But yeah, Barry was very, very good. You know, coming from the professional game. You know, the following season, I think the club went all out and signed some great players in Gary Finley, Paul Evans, Dean Philpott, Gavin O'Toole, some quality players. Lee Barrow came to the club, you know, alongside Kevin Morrison, Glyndwr, Martin Griff was still there, Gavin Allen was at the club, Nigel Nicholas, to try and push for some more success. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. And if that's one grudge that I've got with the football club in all the years that I've been involved, Paul, is that I've seen all this going on and the players they brought in, and unfortunately, as most people would know, you know, how much are they paying him? How much are they paying him? And unfortunately, you know, the sad thing is that we haven't had enough success for what the club has looked after the players.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we come that close to that little bit of success? I mean, the three recent cup finals, for example, just so close to be denied on the final day, which has been unfortunate. But whilst we're on the subject of cup finals, I want to take you back to 2006 and a FAW Youth Cup final down at Port Talbot against Cardiff City, which I believe you were involved as assistant manager to Richie Jones that day against Cardiff City. So can you talk us through that game? And I believe there were some stars of the future playing for Cardiff City.
Yes, absolutely. Richie brought me back to the football club. I took a break. I think Barry Powell had the sack from the first team. I think Frank Regan came in.
Yes.
I still stayed on there as a reserve and youth team manager. He got the sack. And at the time of his sacking, I was probably the most qualified person at the football club on coaching badges. Didn't get the nod from the football club. Instead, they turned to Gary Finley. So at that time, I took the decision to walk away from the football club. I thought that it wasn't the right thing, you know. But anyway, I walked away, and I took a bit of time out actually. And then I think Dave Burrows came involved, and yes. It was at that time when Richie was manager of the reserves. I kept in touch and contact with him and trained a little bit with the reserve squad. That he approached the club and the directors and asked, you know, come on, he's got a B licensed coach. Let's make the most of him. Let's use him. So yeah, I was brought back. That was a great season because obviously Richie was a great manager. He was the man manager of the team. He'd worked them hard. I do the coaching, and we had some fabulous players. But yeah, the youth side of that season, David Edwards was the club doctor now, was in goal. Stefano Antoniazzi, Elian Evans, Martin Norton, Stuart Fraser, Dan James, Richard Thomas, great midfield player, Richard Thomas. I
think he scored 2 in the final, didn't he?
Absolutely. He scored a penalty. Yes, you're right. He scored 2. We had players that we had the boy Williams, Rodri Williams, very fast. Chris Wilkins was another one.
Yeah.
We had some fabulous players. And yeah, it was a great cup run, youth cup run. You know, I remember Porthmadog away. Your dad was there. I think, was that the semi-final?
That was the semi-final, yeah.
It was. So it wasn't on a neutral ground, so we had to travel up there in the semi-final. I can remember one tough game in the cup run. We had to travel down south on a very, very wet and rainy, and the pitch was terrible. I ran the line actually that day, and it didn't stop raining all day, but we managed to grind it out and win 1-0. We had a great minibus journey back home from that. But the semi-final in Porthmadog was very professional. You know, the boys, you know, stuck to the plans and what we had. And the final itself, down in Port Talbot, like you said, we got kitted out in shirts, put ties on. It was a great achievement, you know, again, because I think it's only the second time that the youth team has reached the Welsh Youth Cup final. Going back, I think the 70s was the last time. But it was superb. You know, we lost 5-2. I think there was a young Aaron Ramsey in the side. Or was,
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
And was Mr. Gunter in there as well? Or was that the following season? Oh, there we are.
I believe it was Aaron Ramsey, Chris Gunter, and a guy called Darcy Blake as well.
That's it. That's right, Darcy Blake. Yeah.
The Cardiff's first team.
Believe it or not, we lost our final 5-2. I think we were credit, you know, to Aberystwyth and, you know, to the League of Wales and whatever on that day. You know, we gave a good account of ourselves, and the players held their heads up very highly.
Yeah.
But the following season, I still had some of those players left because Richie, I think, finished that season, and I took over then the reserves and the youth, still the youth team as well. And believe it or not, we drew Cardiff City away and lost 2-1, I think, down there in extra time.
Wow.
And it was played in Treforest, I think, that game was. Steve Bowen and his brother Tom Bowen played for me that day. Steve had a bad injury, but we lost 2-1 in extra time. And I think the under-23s Cardiff had played in the morning, and I'm not sure if it was not Ramsey, not Blake, the other one we named.
Chris Gunter.
Chris Gunter was brought along as a sub, and they had to bring him on just to try and push for the winner. Fortunate enough for them, they got the winner and won 2-1. I think Scotty Young was their manager then on the day. But we drew Cardiff also at Park Avenue in one of the earlier rounds another season at home, which I think might have been one of Cleddon Davis's first games in an Abba shirt. I brought him into the youth team. But yeah, we always used to draw Cardiff City. But yeah, going back to that final, it was a great day. You know, I mean, everything was spot on. We trained quite hard towards it. We did set moves. We did everything on the plays. I think we conceded 2 penalties, if I'm correct as well.
Right. Okay.
I think we scored 1 and conceded 2, and I think David saved both penalties.
Did he?
But they were quicker and more streetwise on the rebound.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I remember. Actually, I was there myself that day. If my memory serves me right, it was a baking hot day as well. Really, really hot down at Port Talbot, and it was the day after the FA Cup final. I think it was the Stephen Gerrard against West Ham. Yeah,
that's right. Liverpool West Ham.
Yeah.
The Stephen Gerrard final.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, it was. On those days, the dugouts were the other side of the changing rooms.
I'm not even sure they had the big stand that they've now got there.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was. You know, come to think of it. But you know, I remember your dad being there. Tony Bates was there. Donald Kane was there. So it was good for the lads. It was a good day for the lads.
Yeah, good. And some more success was to follow for the reserve team as those players sort of graduated into the reserve team the following season with a League and Cup double. Two seasons later, a League and Cup double in 2008. The Mid Wales League and the Central Wales Cup.
Absolutely, Paul. I mean, you know, you go back a few years before that. I think Richie took over the mantle of. He started winning trophies with the reserve side. You know, winning the League Cup. I think they did the double there. I mean, he had great players, you know, in his squad. But yeah, going back to that year, I had the Bowens. I mean, I was also asked as well. David Hinton-Jones is one of the directors of the club, and they were not fed up, but couldn't see any progression from the reserve team into the first team. A lot of people would differ on that because, you know, there's a lot of players that have passed through the reserve team without being given the opportunity at first team level. But, you know, every manager is different, you know, so a lot of players have gone through the reserves, like I said. But yeah, going back to that season, I was asked to go on the young side and not to get so much experienced players in. You know, there was the likes of the Tim Turners, the Hugh Bonners, and you basically had to say to them, look, the club want to go younger. You know, it's time to move forward and try. But you know, I can remember Richard Thomas was probably one of the oldest players that I had in the side as well, and he was only young. Dan James, and I brought an influx of players of the likes of Robert Evans.
Yes.
The 2 Bowens boys, as I said, and Thiago. Do you remember Thiago Silva?
Yes, yeah, I remember him well.
He was at the club then. He was in and out and having some appearances with us. Do you know, I can't remember the whole squad, but but I remember the Bowens with me and Rob Evans. Did Tom Bradshaw? I don't think Tom came along till the following season.
I think Tom would have still only been about 15 that season, wasn't he?
Yes, because it was the year Tom came through was the year of the Welsh Cup final down in Llanelli against Bangor. Yes. That's the year so it was the year after. But yeah, the likes of, I can't remember the side. Richard Thomas, Dan James. I think Stuart Fraser was still with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, we won the league. We beat Newtown in the league. There was a nip and tuck against them. And I think we beat a very, very good, I think it was a TNS side then in the final of the Central Wales Cup at Llanidloes. We won comfortable 4-0.
Brilliant.
But, to be honest, that was my best time at the football club, if I'm honest. Those couple of years there. And, I had a great help from the first team manager then as well. Believe it or not, I had a great understanding with him. You can ask your father. He would either phone me, I would phone him 3, if not 4 times a week, and we'd be on the phone for about an hour, talking about different things and different players, and everything. And it was a great time. And I'll always hold your father in high things in my time.
Well, I think that probably the strength of that relationship was probably shown in the fact that the guys that we've mentioned there. Your Steve Bowens, your Tiagos, I think Tom Bowen, Tom Bradshaw, Stewie Fraser, they all progressed to playing differing amount of games for the first team, but they all progressed to being first team, if not regulars, then certainly guys who were appearing regular from the bench for the first team, particularly that 2007-2008 season. Yeah,
definitely. Like you said, I think Steve Bowen, Tiago, they had some good times with the first team.
Rob Evans, of course, who we've
Rob played in the final, didn't he?
Rob
was
Rob hit the post in the final.
Yeah. I remember Rob Evans' program. I think your dad was still in charge. We lost to Bangor in the quarterfinals at home.
Yes,
and he took the last penalty. And I was sitting in the stand that day thinking, why is a youngster going to take this penalty? But there we are. Must have stuck his hand up. But like you say, quite a few players. I think Dan James had an outing opportunity. Opportunities were given to players at those, but it's one thing having the opportunity is taking it.
Mm-hmm.
But there we are. A lot of players came through then from the reserve team into the first team.
And I think that brings us on nicely to the next sort of topic that I want to talk about with you, and that's reserve team and youth team success stories. Players who have come from the youth team, come from the reserve team, and gone on to succeed at first team level and beyond. And I think the name that really stands out at this point is Tom Bradshaw, who's just his career has been absolutely phenomenal. Did you see that talent in Tom from an early age and early on, and did you think he could achieve what he's gone on to achieve?
I can remember David Hinton. He was the academy director at the time, also a director of the football club. But he was in charge of the academy as a director, and Gary was the head coach, Gary Lewis. And every pre-season, they would want me to go and watch the under-16s academy before the Ian Rush tournament, because they were the next batch to come into youth football. Because at the age of 16, that's your academy, because there was no 19s in those days. So I can remember going up to Penryn Coch pre-season, because Richie used to let us have the top fields up there to do the academy training in different age groups at different times. And I can remember watching the 16s. There were a couple of players in there, Liam Button, there was Christian Jenkins, Sean Clark, and a young lad, Tom Bradshaw. And he was only small. And the name was branded to me. And I can remember from that night onwards, what I saw that night was enough. I thought that this boy definitely had a chance. From there, he came into the youth team and the reserve team, alongside the Bowen boys from Tawyn. And there was another centre half as well that came with him. But Tom, there was something different. As a centre forward, you could see the ball would stick to him. He could turn. He knew where the goal was. He was selected to play for the, I think it was the Ceredigion or Central Wales. It was a game up in Llanny, which Myron Appleton and Byron Hughes were in charge of. I went up there to watch. He had 3 opportunities, didn't take one of them, didn't score, but I thought he had a good game. And I remember Myron Appleton telling me the following day, he said he had one with his left foot, one with his right, one with his head. If you're going to make the game, you've got to put one of them away. And I remember Myron saying that. If that was Jonathan Evans, he said to me, he would have scored one of them. I said, yeah, that's your opinion, Myron. Fair comment. And I will tell you that Myron has come back to me. I made a mistake that night. But anyway, Tom grew and grew. Hugh Bonner was my assistant at the reserve team at the time. And we could see he was something special. And Martin Griff and your dad, Brian, and we were pushing and pushing before Christmas. Give him a chance. Give him a chance. Let him train with you. Let him train with you. Give him the opportunity. It took us a bit of time, but eventually they took it upon themselves to drag him in with them. And, from what he's achieved from there, his history. I mean, he was involved in the semi-final down at Carmarthen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He came on in the final, I think. Did he come on in the final?
Yeah, he had a shot on target in the final.
That's right. Came on in the final. And the history of it, Paul, is is the fact that his mother rang me up and said, look, why isn't my boy having the opportunities with these clubs? Other boys in the academy have been sent here, there and everywhere. I said, I'm not 100% sure, but I can put his name forward, She took it upon herself to phone Shrewsbury Town up. She phoned him up. I don't know who she spoke to. And they invited Tom up there for, I think it was either for a week in half term. I think it was a week. They invited him up there. Didn't go down too well with Abba Town, but the mother and the lad just wanted to go and be players the highest possible that he could. They invited him back for a game on a Saturday, which he did. He played 45 minutes and he signed, I think, the forms, I think, in that week after. I think the club did try and keep him on pro forms with Abba Town, but their mind was set up and he was going to Shrewsbury. And from there to Walsall, and from Walsall to Barnsley, and Barnsley now at Millwall, and
playing international as well.
International, it was superb to see him. I mean, yes, he's had his injury setbacks as well. It's getting tougher because there's a lot of good youngsters coming through at this moment, like another product of the academy, Rhys Norrington-Davis. I mean, it's good for Welsh football, but Tom's got to try and find his feet in the starting lineup at Millwall, which he's not doing regular at the moment, and scoring goals. I mean, goals will open Mr. Giggs' eyes then.
Absolutely. And how good would it be to see him playing in the European Championships this summer if it happens?
He was very unlucky not to go to the last ones. He went on the Portuguese. They went to Portugal before the Euros, but unfortunately he picked an injury up.
Oh,
and
yeah, I remember, yeah.
While he was over there, the physio must have had a good look at him and decided no, there was no chance of him being fit. So I think he only had about 4 or 5 days, if that, in Portugal with the camp, and he was sent back home. But that was their pre-season for the Euros, if you like, the Welsh. But yeah, he was very unlucky. I think Chris Coleman thought a lot of it, but there we are.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed for him this time around.
Yeah, quite.
Just to finish it off with the youth and the reserve team brains, was there anyone apart from Tom who you thought who you would class as a huge success coming out at that time? And on the flip side, is there anyone who you thought really would make the grade that almost didn't quite go as far as what you'd expect?
Put it like this, Paul. I mean, we've had some great players coming through the youth system and reserve football. Have they been given the right opportunity at the football club? it's not for me to answer. I've got my opinion, but you know, there's been a great number of players that have gone through, which personally I think possibly they could have made the first team. Could they have gone further? You can always tell, or I can always tell. I've been privileged, alongside with Gary, to be involved in Tom Bradshaw, Alex Samuel, Rhys Norrington Davis, believe it or not. He played about 6 or 7 games for me underage in the 19s. A great flying winger, and the three of them, the 3 players, I've got to be perfectly honest with you, attitude spot on. You know, proper gentlemen, the 3 of them. Alex would go through a brick wall for you. Alex would play football every day of the week if he was allowed to. Tom would do as he's told. He was a great trainer, good footballer. You know, I put Tom up in digs, believe it or not, for about 3 or 4 months because he was studying in Penglade School. And half his year was he had to be at the school at 9 o'clock in the morning, travelling from Towyn. And the other half, you know, he didn't have to be there till the afternoon. Well, the morning shifts, his mother and father I got to know quite well, so he stayed with me for 3 months. But yeah, and the other one, Rhys Norrington Davis, another pleasant guy, you know, attitude spot on, turn up, you know, never late, always on time. And you could see in those 3, they wanted to go as far as they could. There's other players that, yes, but not quite the heart. And if I want to go back to my days as a youngster, like I've said to you, to me, Aberystwyth is not the area to grow up to be a footballer. Aberystwyth doesn't quite mix with being a professional footballer. What do I mean by that is if you look around Aberystwyth, what's there to do in Aberystwyth? There's not a great deal to do. I mean, I can remember as a kid in my summertime walking around, or should we go and have a game of bowls? Lawn bowls. We went to the club and I remember, no, sorry, you can't play. Tennis, I remember, sorry, can't play. Are you a student? Sorry, you can't play tennis on these courts. What else can you do in Aberystwyth? There's loads of pubs.
I was just about to say, as a former Aberystwyth University student, there is an obvious answer here. But
and for, you know,
pubs and footballers who want to progress probably don't mix as well as.
Honestly, I could reel them off for you. You know, I mean, I've seen hundreds of players during my decade with Abba, but I've seen some good players and players that you think, oh, pull him to one side, grab him, you know, look after him. But yeah, unfortunately, and I've seen some students as well. You know, I've had some students playing for Aberystwyth. You know, I had Garmon Havan and Rhys Lloyd. Rhys Lloyd is involved with Scorio. Endav Jones. I had some great students.
Yeah, I know Endav, yeah.
A goalkeeper recently played for the first team. He was involved in the squad with Gav. Can't remember his name. Played black hair just recently in the last couple of seasons. But anyway, he came down to town as a student, phoned me up straight away.
Guy played in Europe?
No, didn't play in Europe. Didn't play in Europe. Played in the last couple of years. But he played for my youth team in the Central Wales Youth Cup as well. But Adam, his name was.
Right.
But yeah, like you say, but as you well know yourself, pubs in Aberystwyth. But yeah, unfortunately.
So just to talk about the sort of the last decade as such, reserve teams were not allowed in the Spa Mid Wales from, I think it was 2010 onwards. Was that a decision that you agreed with or disagreed with at the time?
Definitely disagreed with it because obviously the decision was made through Spa Mid Wales clubs pushing ourselves, Aberystwyth and Newtown. And Llanidloes, I think, at that time. Or was it Newtown? Newtown and Aberystwyth, definitely. Because there was no progression to the Cymru Alliance, because you had to win the Spa Mid Wales League to get promotion into the Spa. And a lot of clubs disagreed with that. But, you know, in my eyes, is if you can't beat the reserve teams to finish above them on top, well, you don't deserve to have promotion. But that's what the FAW and the Welsh Football Association decided. No more reserve teams. So that was the end of the reserve teams.
Yeah, and I think just my opinion, but I think players who are trying to bridge that gap between youth football and first team football would really, really benefit from having that sort of that sort of team to play in at that standard at this time. And maybe the league would see some more players actually coming through the academies, which all the teams now obviously have, into the first team, if that opportunity was available in this day and age. But
yes, definitely, 100% right. I think, to be honest, I think Penryn Coch, they were lucky enough then that they could still, because we were in the same league as Penryn Coch, and we were always fighting for the players. I mean, Sean James, I remember Sean James coming around to my house wanting to sign for Abba Reserves. Because we'd had the better of Penryn the season before, but signed Sean on. But Penryn gained from that, I think, as well, and which is only right. And it was good. It's good to see them doing well in the Cymru Alliance.
So that was 2010. So just talk us through the last 10 years leading up to your position today as club director. How's the last decade been for you, and what what teams have you been involved with, and what stands out over the last 10 years or so leading to the position that you're in today?
Well, I mean, the last, 2001, when Alan Morgan was there. Yeah, just done the reserve teams. I mean, Alan came, Ian Hughes came.
Yeah.
Matthew Bishop came along, and I was still involved there doing but the 19s came into play then. I went to Bow Street, mind, once the Abba Reserves were left out to the Spa Mid Wales League. I went to Bow Street. I was fortunate enough. Club chairman Wyn Lewis got in touch with me. I met him and a couple of his committee members to take over there, because Hugh Bates was manager of Bow Street, a successful Mid Wales club at the time. But I went there and took over there for a season. Very, very well run club. Off the field, definitely. One of the best around. They've got everything, to the dollar. They know what they're doing. The committee is on top of it. They've had success in their footballs as well. The first team, I think, they've won a couple of cups. And it was great. It was an honour to be asked to go there. The setup is superb. They had a lovely field there, changing rooms, a great setup, and I thoroughly enjoyed my season there. Unfortunately, we lost in the semi-final of the League Cup to Carno. To Montgomery at Carno, didn't quite get to the final, but I did enjoy that, and I'm very grateful for that time, But luckily, the FAW decided to start a under 19s academy team, and I was fortunate enough to be able to go back and be manager of that.
Brilliant. And then from the under 19s team, you've progressed to being club director as you are today, and I'm sure that brings around some different challenges off the field as opposed to on the field.
Yes, definitely, Paul. I mean, it's I did the 19s for about 3 or 4 years. Very hard years. It was something new. We travelled up north every Sunday, probably leaving the ground at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, trying to get the players that weren't actually signed on for the football club, but they were signed on for other clubs, but allowed them to play for the 19s. It was difficult. I mean, at the time, I was on the phone constantly. I mean, Saturday night was a nightmare because I was just waiting for the phone to ring to say, "Oh, I picked up an injury today, can't play tomorrow." And I was struggling then, to get a team to go and play on a Sunday. We changed then from the north down to the south. Things didn't really progress because we couldn't quite get these players to just sign for the under 19s. They couldn't quite see what it was, but fortunate for the football club. Barry Morgan came, wanted to progress in his coaching, and he took the reins over, but stated the only reason that he would do it was that the players would have to be signed on for Aberystwyth purely alone, which was a great move by himself. The rest is history. What Barry achieved with them, I think they won the under 19s, the Welsh system 2 years on the trot. So it's wonderful. And Dave Owen has taken it over now, up to the COVID, obviously, and they were having a good season. So and from that, I think Donald pulled me to one side and said that, look, you've been at this club long enough now. Don't you think, give somebody else the opportunity? Let them go on. They're younger than you. put your feet up a little bit, come and join us on the board. You know, it took me about 2 or 3 weeks. I felt a little bit down. You know, like I said, football's always been in my blood. I wanted to be involved all the time, but giving me a month of not being out in that rain, snow, hail, and training, and wondering who was turning up, and I soon found that, yeah, feet up, going to a meeting once, twice a week, and just going to enjoy and watching a game rather than being part of it and pulling my hair out and sleepless nights. But yeah, looking from the outside now, from the inside of on the directors around the table with the likes of the hardworking, you know, Tony Bates, Jock, Donald Kane, Kevin Morrison, the vice chairman, Di Caprice, Jimmy Lavin, who's been a great supporter of the club for more years than myself, probably. Thomas Crockett, obviously, but he doesn't come to meetings as he's based in Cardiff. You see the other side of the football club. It was all right being on the coaching side and looking in and thinking, oh, what are they doing up in those meetings? What do they actually talk about? But I can now see the amount of work that goes into running a football club, which a lot of people don't understand and don't realise. You know, looking after people, you know, players, managements. You've got to make sure everything's right for them. You know, there's a ladies' team in Abbott as well. You know, you know that comes under the board of directors as well. And as well, we've got the academy system now, which Gav is in charge of that and doing a great job on that. So that comes under all the board of directors. And if we didn't have all of that, the academy side, we wouldn't have a first team.
Yeah.
Because one, if the first team get relegated from the Welsh Premier, unfortunately we lose the status of the academy. But also, if we don't run the academy and pass all the you know, the licenses, all the ticks in the boxes that the trust wants you to do, you know, we don't get a first team. So we've got to make sure that's running properly. And, you know, yeah, we're in good, safe hands on that side of it.
Okay, good. Glad to hear it. So just to finish off then, Brains, what are your hopes for the club moving forward then as director and as, you know, as a supporter of the club as well? What do you hope to happen for the club to achieve in the sort of medium to long term future?
I think a bit of stability, you know, a good structure. That's what, you know, I think we need a very, very, very good structure. And sometimes I think we'll have to take 2 steps back before we go forward. We've tended in the past, like I've said to you, to go, you know, a little bit forward too quickly in my eyes, you know. I mean, but, you know, very good structure. We've got one in the academy now. If we can start working on that and progressing that through, you know, hopefully into the get some players into the first team, working on that, getting the right players to the club. I think, unfortunately, you know, the last year, like I said with Gav, I think he was offered a couple of players on the, you know, on the offering side, you know, and I think they weren't the right players for the club. Very unfortunate for him. But we, you know, we need good players to come to the club here and to move forward and hope that we can stabilise and build on it, you know, every season. Can we build on it? And yes, obviously we want to be in the top 6, try and get into that, but still the main objective is to finish 10th and stay in the league. You know, it is hard work. It's a business. It's a very hard run thing to do. You're fighting against the likes of TNS, your Connors Keys, your Ballas. They're virtually full time. You know, Barry Town. You know, it's a money business sport at the moment, unfortunately, and you know it's where you are on the map. It's difficult to attract players to Abba. If you attract them, they want more money to come. You know, especially the better ones. It's very, very difficult. But if we can build, you know, from one season to the other, who knows? And honestly, and you know, as an avid fan from the youngster going down there and watching the likes of Di Whitney, the Pew Jones, Will Lloyds, you know, right through, you know, all the teams that I've seen down there, you know, I'll be down there supporting regardless of what, and hopefully the black and greens can come forward and move on.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. But I'm actually just going to spring this on you because I should have sent you these quickfire questions across before, but I've not actually done it, so I do apologise for that. So got a few just quickfire questions to finish here, if you don't mind. So the question is the best player you've played with at Abba, but the best player that you've played with or managed at Abba.
Very difficult to answer that, to be honest, because like I said, I've seen so many great players. Kenny Wills, Donald Kane, Gavin O'Toole, Phil Johnson, technically brilliant. You got the likes of Nigel Nicholas. You got the likes of Mark Devereux, albeit they're my friends. Robbie Jones, unfortunately, just recently passed away. But those two players, they put that green and black shirt on for nothing, and they would go through a brick wall for you, which they did. Chris Venables has got to be one of the tops, an absolute, to me, a Gareth Bale player. And I've told him that, and I think I mentioned it before. He's got everything, and he's still doing it. He score goals. He works hard, box to box. He's an all-rounder, albeit he's playing number 10 for Ban.
I've said it a few times myself. For me, he's been the best player every season in the league for the last 10 years.
Yeah, no, definitely. But too many to mention, the best. But no, Chris Venables has got to be up there.
Okay, so can you mention the worst trainer? Is there anyone that stands out?
I can't say Andy Evans, no. And I wouldn't say Andy Evans. Do you know, I can't believe that none of the others, whether they're frightened, but I've got to say, I'll give you two. And they're all local. I've only used players from away. You've had some good players from away, don't get me wrong. And that was another little thing that I used to hate as well. Or two things. One used to be the physio's bed. How many players would be on that on training nights? And the other one was you'd get players coming travelling from away, and they'd be out there training, and you'd get the local players, they'd be injured. That was a pet hate of mine as well. Go on, I'll name them. I'll say Nigel Thomas and Kevin Morrison.
Brilliant, and I'm sure they'll both hear this as well.
That'll stir it up a bit.
So, moving on from that, what's your best memory of your time with Abba?
Yet again, Tom Bradshaw coming on for his first international cap, sitting at home watching that, and just to think that I've been part of that, lads, footballing. That was a great moment for me. Winning the double with the reserve team, obviously the Welsh Youth Cup final, Floriana. There's too many to mention, to be honest with you. As a youngster, winning cups with the youth team, scoring. I think I scored 6 in one game at Park Avenue against, albeit Tywin, but I scored 6. Scoring 3 in that replay quarter final. Bus trips. There's too many to mention, Paul. I've had great times with the club, and long may it continue.
And is there a worst memory that you can pick out?
Gary Finley getting the job was quite hard, because I just come off a week in the pre-season of achieving my B licence with the likes of John Barnes, Neville Southall, Andy Townsend, Tony Cascarino, Andy Legg, Mark Pembridge, Dean Saunders. Being on that and achieving my B licence for that, and getting overlooked as I was reserve team manager as well, was a little bit, but there we are. That's football, like I said. But I don't think I had many bad times. I mean, maybe the clubhouse getting burnt down might be one of the worst things. I think, of the Saturday, I was actually in the disco room that evening in a function when the place went on fire. But I don't think there's any sad times, Paul. You always come out of it. Abba Town will always be there.
Yeah, absolutely. And then finally, just to completely finish us for the evening, can you sum up your time with Aberystwyth Town in 3 words? Brilliant,
enjoyable, or should I say long may continue. That's 5.
We'll give you that. That's absolutely fine. That's brilliant. Well, Brains, listen, thanks very much for giving up your time this evening to come and have a chat with me. Really enjoyed talking to you and hearing all your stories. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing you at Park Avenue very, very soon. Thanks a lot.
And to you, Paul, and look forward to seeing you. Send my regards to your dad, mate.
I will do. Thanks very much. Cheers, mate.
Cheers, Paul.